Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for the Ecosystem Open House today. I am super excited to welcome you all. Thank you so very much. And I hope all of you are doing well and staying safe. It is my great pleasure to welcome two wonderful personalities on the online dais today, Mr. Ravi Narayan, CEO THub, and Mr. Darshan Doshi, Director Adaption. Welcome, Darshan. Welcome, Ravi. Thank you so very much for accepting our invitation and joining us for the open house today. It's a pleasure to have you both here.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Darshan. Darshan, who is also the moderator for the session, I would like to have a quick introduction what Darshan is all about. Darshan works with early stage startup founders and investors. Over the last few years, he has touched upon 100 plus founders in various roles at Reliance Next, Vadvani Foundation, Flame University. At present, he is a director of adoption, working on building one of the most innovative learning and development SaaS products. He is also the founder of Dasar, a startup podcast. He is also behind building the entrepreneur village at Flame University. As an advisory board member at Babin Collaborative, he is enabling member of universities around the globe to create a strong entrepreneurship education ecosystem. He is a graduate from Babson College with honors and have been active in the US and Indian startup communities in various roles. He is also an active TIE charter member and Pune International Center member. Welcome, Darshan. Thanks for accepting our invitation. I'm sure all the audience are going to have a great time for the next 1 hour. I'm sure you cannot take away your eyes and ears off your computer screen. Have a great 1 hour ahead. I would request Darshan to introduce Ravi and start the show. Over to you, Darshan.
Thanks, Shankar. It's been an absolute pleasure to mentor a few startups from the THub ecosystem. I had the chance to work with both Ravi and Vinuta earlier. And so, very quickly, a quick introduction about Ravi Narayan. Ravi is, I think we owe a lot, the Indian ecosystem, the startup ecosystem owes a lot to Ravi Narayan, Prasanna Krishnamurthy, and the Microsoft Accelerator team. They worked so hard to back from 2012-13 right till now, where a lot of the startup accelerators, incubator programs, a lot of the people who have come up and now are taking the lead in various incubator and accelerator roles have actually in some shape or form interacted with the Microsoft Accelerator team, which was led by Ravi. And so, a quick introduction. Ravi is a 3-time entrepreneur. He has been a product engineer. He's turned into an investor. And lately, he's also been advising various state governments as well as international governments such as Malaysia, Singapore, and the likes, right? So, we have with us someone who has been there, done that. So that I think is very, very important. Second, someone who's actively involved, someone who's working towards a better ecosystem, towards driving innovation, and looks at the whole life cycle, right, from conceptualization, from ideation, all the way to investing in the startups, right? I think so. We have someone who I've always looked up to. I've enjoyed Ravi's conversations. I first interacted with Ravi when I was head of operations at Reliance's Next, and Next was a partner to Microsoft Accelerator at the time back in 2016-17. And so, formed a lot of really good friendships in this ecosystem because of that. So welcome, Ravi. It's going to be, I'm looking forward to this session. I have a lot of questions, but maybe a quick hi to the audience from you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm looking forward to an interesting conversation. I am now a little worried that Darshan has so many questions, and which facet of mine he will, reveal. I don't know, but I look forward to interacting with him and all of you.
Excellent. Thank you. Thanks a lot, audience members, for joining us. It's been a tough time. COVID has hit us hard. This second wave, third wave, fourth wave, whatever wave we want to call it. The result of it is many of us have at least a person who we know or a family member who may have been infected or had a tragedy. And so, our good wishes to you and your family. And this is also a time to reflect upon and, take care of not just our body, but our mental health as well. Now, before we get started, I wanted to run a very quick poll, which is in front of you, to get a sense of who is joining this call, who is joining this session, so that we can fine tune the session to your own needs. Fantastic. We'll give it another 5 minutes, and while you fill or complete the poll, one of the things that you'll find at the bottom is there's a Q&A box. We want to make this session as interactive as possible. We are here for you, right? And so the best way to do this is where if you can send in your questions, any question is allowed. I'm going to kick off with a couple of questions from my end, and then I'll pull in questions based on what you put under Q&A. We're going to keep some questions sometime right at the end as well, where you could raise your hand and you can unmute yourself and ask the questions as well. But I'm very happy to moderate them and let it flow through the conversation. All right, so we have more than 80% who've completed the poll. I'm just going to share the results with you. In front, what you will find is almost 35% of the people come from a startup. We have a decent chunk of people from academia. I don't know where I lie, whether it's academia or startup or investor, but I think we've got a good mix of people, and very good to see some government folks joining this conversation as well. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing and get straight into the questions, right? So Ravi, today's topic is about resilience, building a robust, resilient ecosystem, which goes beyond an individual or an organization, and we are thinking about it more from scale point of view. And so, my first question was, well, what is the definition of resilience? What is the definition? Because there's also Nassim Taleb talks about being anti-fragile and resilience. Now, resilience at Adeption, we run resilience programs for corporate leaders, which is kind of, the art of coming back after you've been hit with a tragedy or having some challenges in your life, right? So it's your ability to come back, essentially. But anti-fragility is a completely different definition, which is using the chaos to grow. And we've seen that in the last 14 months or so. We've seen people really, really grow out of the chaos that has taken place. So maybe the first question to you is, what are your thoughts on, as an individual, as a startup, as a community, the startup community, and as a nation, what does resilience or anti-fragility mean to you?
Great, Darshan. Thank you for the question. So I know I wanted to talk about what's happening in the startup world. So first of all, people say, oh my God, startups as it is, they are very fragile beings, entities. More and more of them are closing down. And so first of all, I look at those people and say, well, that's the nature of the startup world. I think when each and every one of us went into the entrepreneurial journey, we knew that there would be, dangers, there would be risks that we'll be taking up. So that is the first thing that I think we all know, and that's what we are getting into, and that's the nature of that world. Now, with this pandemic coming about, what happens is there are certain sectors in the markets that completely disappear. Now, we as human beings, we may be in denial. We may actually look at this as an opportunity for bravado. We may think that, what the hell, we are going to persist. We're going to come out of this thing and therefore, spend the money or take some measures in, bringing down the costs and continue on. But I think it's a sin to do that, because if the opportunity has evaporated, it is probably better for you to uh, conserve your entrepreneurial energy. It is better for you to be much more in consonance with the reality of the space, and just move out. So for example, there are certain businesses that say let are in the transportation or hospitality, that were already beginning to find out that there was some um uncertainty, and then this was now going to be a long term uncertainty, and therefore their ability to build something big and substantial or even profitable has gone away. So 15% of the startups or more than that have actually shut operations, and that's okay. I think that's actually less than what would have happened under normal circumstances. This is over and beyond that a little bit more, so that is fine. So in that way, you're much more in your integrity is high. You're keeping with the larger vision. You find that the vision has evaporated. You make some calls. You save yourself. You save your families. You save your employees. You save your investors. A lot of heartache, and then you move on and you get ready for something even bigger probably next time around. On the other hand, there is resilience, which is what Darshan brought about, where I feel that your ability to understand that the markets are changing. The markets are have probably given you a reality check, have given you a blow, and now you're coming back and saying, I will change my path. Either you have already the technology, the understanding of the market, and all that in place, and you're saying, what, because I'm so much grounded in the reality of the market, I understand it better than anybody else. Who better than me to actually change course? And therefore, you're resilient enough to come back into what may be a more mainstream, a more lucrative, a more scalable path than the one that you were on before, right? So it is absolutely important for you to realize that, take some quick calls. It may be a small pivot, it may be a large pivot, it doesn't matter. It has to be done because you, amongst anybody else that is in that market, understands the customers, understands the technology. You are making that call right at there, where at that juncture. The third one for me is what Darshan talked about, the anti-fragility part. I think at this time in the pandemic, more than ever, we have seen that entire new markets are opening up. Entire new capabilities that were thought about, like digitalization and all that, right, was possible. Have to do it. It's. I think it's inevitable and all that. Suddenly we said, shit, whatever you're supposed to do in 10 years, you have to get it done in 10 months if you have to stay alive. So that for me is going back to the drawing board. It requires a lot of courage because you're leaving your comfort zone, you're leaving what you've already done, you're leaving some customers, you're probably leaving some revenues on the table to be able to take these large changes, large pivots of the startup. But it always pays off, because not only are you now going into a blue ocean, you have lots of opportunities right there in front of you, but also there are lots of investors that have a lot of dry powder waiting to invest in companies. So interestingly, as much as you think this is the time that you are running out of money, there are lots of people who have actually raised much more money in the last several several quarters. So in fact, the July to September quarter of 2020, $14.9 billion was raised versus 4.9 billion in the same quarter in 2019. So you can imagine the amount of money, the amount of interest from the investors is definitely high. Now, how do you really tap into that and build new businesses in a place which has less competition. Yes, it is a little scary because nobody else is there. So you think you are either an idiot or you are extremely smart and therefore you're going to be successful. And that's why you're coming down this path. So you actually have the ability to come out in a completely different way. So you are making sense of that chaos. You're making sense of all that, uh, you know, major tectonic shifts that are happening. But you come out by making some bets. Of course, you will make course corrections along the way, but you actually have decided to let go of that comfort zone and go into something absolutely new. And that's where lots of large companies will come out. We haven't seen them yet. They may have raised a Series A, Series B at the moment, but those, if you see that there's a whole bunch of IPOs happening in the next 3 to 4 years, it is because of some of those anti-fragile decisions that were made during this time.
Excellent. You touched upon a bunch of things, the liquidity in the market, which I have a question for, which we'll get into. But then you also talked about being prepared, right? The robustness, the preparation. There are various people, and one of the persons that we know, Prasanna Krishnamurthy, he runs the UPECA Accelerator program, right? So I remember having conversations with him where he would prepare and work with his founders to get ready for COVID, in the months of last May, June, July. And so he put together certain initiatives for his portfolio of startups, which were SaaS oriented. I'm curious to learn, what are some of the initiatives that THub has put together to support a broader base of startups that it has in its, under its influence, which it touches, to prepare for COVID and post-COVID, right? All the things that you talked about, like cash positions. Do we reduce our team size? Do we change the sector? Do we change the geography focus? Do we change the products, right? So maybe some examples, if you could share about how THub has gone about supporting various startups.
Yeah. So before that, I just want to take a couple of minutes to explain what THub does, because it's so many things to so many people that maybe I should just give a quick overview and then dig into some of the things that we are doing differently. So one thing, of course, is the fact that we work with startups. And it is not limited to startups of any particular stage, maturity, but we usually pick up closer to, Series A, seed funding, Series A kind of a thing. And then we build from there, Series A, Series B and all that. So anybody who is doing anything, employing technology to build, fantastic business models, delivery models, and so on. I think those are the ones that we, really like to work with. We have a special mandate to build this kind of an ecosystem in the state of Telangana, and that's where we focus on primarily. But because of the fact that now our delivery mechanism has become digital, we can influence and impact much larger sets of companies that are even outside of Telangana. So one is on the demand creation, sorry, on the supply of fantastic innovators and entrepreneurs is one side of it. The other side of it is, who are the people who actually are close to the markets, close to understand um, the new dynamics in the markets, and take that and build their new products and services. These are large corporations, these are the governments, and these for us are the demand generators. These are the people who provide the problem statements for these startups to solve for. So it's one thing to solve for a larger market research kind of thing and that you do, or you use the proxy of looking at what are the corporations struggling with, what are they looking to solve for, and therefore solve for that, knowing that they will actually also be able to give you access to much larger swaths of demand in the market, right? So these are two primary things that we do. The third that we do is what we call as ecosystem innovation, which is to help raise the the level of the water, so all boats rise. So all incubators get access, get better access to mentors, get better access to investors, get better access to capabilities and stuff like that, right? So that's what we do. So building an ecosystem in a much more efficient way rather than serendipitous way, right? That's what we are focused on doing. Now, in that context, obviously, the Hyderabad, the Telangana ecosystem is one that is coming together very quickly and rapidly growing. Having said that, there are three areas in which we began to do a lot more of. One, obviously, is what you mentioned that Upeka and Prasanna have been doing, which is starting to go a lot deeper into these organizations. So as I talked about resilience and anti-fragility earlier, it's one thing for us to take on the surface what these startups tell us is what they are facing as problems, concerns, and so on and so forth. And if we take it at face value and start solving for it, chances are we may not be solving the right problems. So for us, the ability for us to go deeper and understand the root causes of those symptoms is always very good. Now, it's not very easy to do that. There are possibilities of doing this when you have a few startups that you need to deal with, which is some of the accelerators are doing. But it's another to actually do this in scale. So we have come up with this very colorful name called the Know the Color of the Chaddis of these startups, plan, which is, this is our internal operating uh, name of how we really get to understand them well enough so that we are giving them some relevant, some very apt advice so that they can make those changes. And there's also a lot more empathy, once you start getting deeper into these organizations and being able to, wear the shoes of the entrepreneurs. You just understand them better, not just from a business standpoint, but also from a personal, journey standpoint. You are able to help them a lot deeper. So we have been doing a lot of the things that you just mentioned, as part of your question, so that we can really make an impact. And that's the reason we take startups that are almost coming up to, product beyond product market fit, so that we can take them past that. So one of the problems with an ecosystem is there's so much mortality that happens prior to that. If they have already finished their journey and not made it to that point, then that's okay. But if they made it to that point and they are the role models that will help the next generation of entrepreneurs to come, and if they fail, then there's a ripple effect. So we want to make sure that those people actually succeed and continue to grow. And therefore, it's important for us to go deeper and really help them to do what they need to do. So that's one part of all the programs that you see are now doing this in scale. The second thing that we did, Darshan, is we understood that while there may be a lot of possibilities of doing mentoring and this kind of knowing the color of the chaddis and all that wonderful stuff, but you also need to bring the funding element into it, because as much as we talk about certain things, they also need the resources to actually mobilize to take that advice and make something out of it, right? And that's the reason we have set up something called a funding desk. So the funding desk is where you have access to grants, you have access to loans, you have access to equity. And we will take you through the rigor of how to go about doing it, and really taking this to understand, first of all, which of these is best suited for you, and so on and so forth. Why? Because there is money out there. The government is putting up grants. They want to provide certain incentives. The government of Telangana, for example, we help them incentivize startups to making the right progress, either through hiring or patent filing or performance, year on year growth, and so on and so forth. How do you continue to incentivize them so that they can clock good progress. So that's the second thing on the funding side. And the third, so coming back to that, so the other thing is, of course, there are VCs and other investors that are also wanting to participate in these very interesting companies that are emerging, solving these problems that they can see for themselves are making a lot of sense. So that's the second. And the third one is a lot of our work, as much as it is a little painful, is done digitally. As in, we are able to work with startups even though they have to work from home, even though they are not able to come and meet with us and have those wonderful brainstorming sessions, the whiteboarding sessions, which I think is fundamental to the nature of entrepreneurship and really coming up with new ideas. While we do have some of those sessions, but the rigor that we try to enforce in terms of making sure that the startups are making the right moves and using the right resources frugally, prudently, and so on and so forth is done completely through a digital medium. So that way we are really able to provide our help to lot more startups than ever before. One of the things that we started out with was all about startups coming and sitting in the building. Now we don't need them to sit in the building anymore. Yet we are able to make a fantastic difference in their entrepreneurial journey.
Awesome. And I remember visiting THub, I think just about 2 years ago, to conduct a session with another mentor on, I think it was lean startup or effectuation. I don't understand. I don't remember exactly. But that beautiful building and the beautiful place, it's an awesome place to be. Hopefully we kind of get over COVID and everyone's vaccinated so we can, be back to that beautiful location soon. Now, here's a question, just before I get into the other questions that I have. Are large corporations at an advantage to scale innovations more than startups, given where we are today?
From a resource standpoint, oh, by the way, before I get into answering that question, I should tell you, if you're coming back post this second wave, you probably will be coming to even more beautiful building because we will be moving to something much larger and much more beautiful. So everyone who's here listening to us should come visit us because this is the new avatar of THub.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So coming back to the corporate this thing. So yeah, the corporations are have a lot of things going for them, right? They have access to markets like in none others, understanding the market very well. The second one is they have customer relationships at the highest levels, which a lot of startups can only dream about. They have a lot of resources. Hopefully, they have good balance sheets, so they have some money that they can invest into certain new projects. And of course, they have people, people that can work on these things, very quickly and so on. So that while they have all those, they are also handicapped in the sense that the changes are happening way too fast. And yes, the rigor of program management and marketing and pricing and all that stuff is absolutely important to really do this at scale. But the fundamentals of building the solutions, I think, still will be best sourced from startups. Because if you really want to build something, a new, let's say, a core banking facility, given that there are so many people now online and doing whatever they're doing, you need to be solving for this not just from the standpoint of what does it mean to rebuild this entire IT system. How do you handle enormous amount of data that is coming? Is there any way for you to do some data analysis real time, data visualization, maybe for you to be able to do different things with different sectors of customers that you have, or maybe even people who are using this through mobile versus laptops. So you have so much that you can do now that you don't necessarily have to put another band-aid on the thing that you already have and do it in a different way. Because if you continue to do that, chances are you won't see 2022, or even if you do 2023, it will be even harder. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is, I think this is also an opportunity for you to go back and see what is the best way for you to be much more responsive to an emerging market that is standing out there, and for you to build those solutions quickly, put them out there, and get quick feedback. I think is a possibility if you collaborate with startups. Your go-to-market strategy, go-to-market timings are going to be much shorter should you embark on that part. And that's what we are trying to tell our corporate partners to really work with. So we have about 400 plus corporate partners that are working with us, and each one of them is in a different place and different sector, and they have different demands, but uniformly across all of them, innovation is absolutely in the need of the hour. And who better than startups to actually help provide that innovation to them?
Just to build on that, and fintech is a fantastic topic to talk about. We had one question, and I just wanted to build on what you said. Neo banking is basically a new skin on the existing banking, is what one of the early stage founder puts it, right? Now, the finance or the banking industry has been around for decades. And why have they not come out with so many new innovations, given we have the digital infrastructure, which is either the accounts aggregator framework or the UPI, and all the different policy changes that are coming through. And so for a bank, an existing bank with a large customer base, to take drastic decisions, that becomes a little bit more challenging to come out and really roll out innovative products or solutions. And just on that, on my podcast at Dasar, I've had 4 fintech founders, those who worked 10 years in these large banks or insurance companies, and then they started a startup, took lots of funding, and today are one of the fastest growing ones. So for those who are kind of interested on that, you could take a look at that podcast. But to answer that question really is, are they nimble enough? Are these large corporations nimble enough? And are they so focused that they can bet all their resources or put significant amount of resources towards that innovation? And so what I am at least seeing with a lot of the corporations is they want to augment by bringing and interacting with the startups, right? And so GeoGen Next is one such initiative. I know there are many other companies who are, creating startup initiative arms so that it doesn't become their focus area, but they can get the benefit out of it for their own customer base. So fantastic part on that. You said 2 things. One was around capital, the grants, and we have a question from Lavanya saying that there's so much funding from government, but startups still need to run around for working capital. And then the CIBIL score has come down from 800 to 600 just in 1 year. And so I'm going to broaden that question a little bit and say today there is probably the highest amount of venture capital that has been available in India. At least that's what my interaction with various founders and investors shows me. So if you're a startup, do you raise funding given there's plenty available right now and take more amount of funding than what is required? Or do you, wait out another 6 months when you had originally planned to, hit those milestones and then raise the funding? So I'm just augmenting that question by Lavanya a little bit, but would love to get your thoughts on raise because there is money available or stay the course.
Yeah. So, Darshan, I'll go back to our original question and the response to that, right? So if you're already clear about the path that you want to take, so if you're shifting to a different path, and you feel that the opportunity that is in front of you is enormous, and you can go grab as much of the market as possible quickly today, and therefore you want to go ahead and raise money to be able to do that, I think it makes eminent sense, and you can also make a huge case for um, the investors. They will also look at this and say, great, that's good. But at the same time, if you are still unsure, you're still fiddling around with your product, you're still fiddling around with your getting your pricing right, you're fiddling around with getting your promotion right. Obviously doesn't make sense to go raise too much money, because you're diluting yourself for something that you are not very sure of. So basically what I'm trying to get to is, if there is a sure shot and there's a very clear path of how you want to go, and you want to get there fast, I think there's no reason why you should not raise money quickly and go down that. But if there is that uncertainty, there are other possibilities there. So while you may not be ready for a complete equity raise, there are other opportunities for you where you can do a convertible note. You can do some other kind of a thing which eventually converts into equity, a debt instrument, and so on and so forth. So that's definitely possible. But I think, going back to what Lavanya asked specifically about working capital, I think that is going to be a problem for all startups. As much as we are beginning to see that there are certain startups that will qualify for the under an MSME scheme, and they therefore can get that CGT MSCs also, but they're few and far between. This has not become a commonplace thing, although DPIIT and other organizations think it is possible for us to consider them. We have not been able to grant as many as we think we should be to make that happen. Unfortunately, tech startups do not have collaterals, and banks and other uh, you know uh, credit agencies only look at that as a way for them to do this. And while there may be a mandate at the highest levels to go ahead and do it, but when it comes to a bank manager interacting with you, if they don't understand this enough, they're not the ones to take the risk and provide you that loan. So there are lots of things that need to be solved, but theoretically, a lot of these things are now being ironed out, and you will see some changes happening over the next, I would say, 6 to 9 months.
Great. There's also a thing that you talked about, innovation, and a big part of today's topic is around building innovation ecosystem. India has rapidly moved up from. I remember 3 years ago we were ranked about 93 or so on the Global Innovation Index. Today we are just under 50, I suppose. And a lot of that has got to do with various startup initiatives. A lot of that has got to do with a lot of corporations pushing through on a lot of innovations. Now, India, at least the IT sector, has got a lot of patents that were created out of India, maybe even the healthcare industry, right? But we also have a tag which is being more copycat or focus on business model innovation. We are very, very good with business model innovation, the Indian market, right? But not a lot of product innovations coming through compared to the West or rest of the world. So what are your thoughts in, addressing this thing where what will it take for us as ecosystem partners, ecosystem leaders to say that, we want people to come out with more innovative products and solutions?
Yeah, see, there are two dimensions to this, Darshan. One is obviously, the kind of product innovation that you see, say in the Valley or any other part of the United States, or some of the other centers in Tel Aviv and London and other ecosystems. Those definitely have evolved to this point over a period of time. Now, you do see some of those kinds of innovations coming out of Bangalore. You would see some of this coming out of Delhi, Mumbai, and all that. It's not that we don't have them, but do we have proportionately as many as others? We don't. So it's a matter of time in that sense. I'm very optimistic about how quickly we have gotten to where we have gotten to today. And we'll get to those kinds of proportions on the product innovation side as well. Because I did uh, a demo day for NetApp some time ago, and some of the startups that were there were very similar in terms of the problems that they were solving, the magnitude of the problem that they're solving, the depth of technology that they were using, the size of the startups, and the amount of money that they have raised was no different from a Silicon Valley startup. And they were sharing the stage on the demo day there. And I was looking at this and I was saying, this is fantastic. And these were Indian names, Indian faces, and that happens in Silicon Valley too. So I'm very optimistic about the fact that we will get to the product innovation stage. And I think the business model innovation that you alluded to were ways in which we began to break the mold, do much more than just copying of what was already available in different places. But that was a place for us to start. And the maturity, the ability to take much larger risk, to the ability to solve larger problems is also growing. It's not like we are doing this in small jumps. We are doing this through large increments, and that's the reason we are able to do as much as we have done so far. And if you look at the product innovation, you look at NASCOM Product Conclave, for example, the way it has grown from I ran it in 2009 to today in 2021. I mean, they have aspirations of building this economy by 10 times in the next 5 years. I mean, this is something that they can only say, and these are leaders of our product economy. We're saying it's possible to do if we just put our minds to it, and that's a significant statement for them to make. And this was not this year; it was actually done 2 years ago, right? So it's very possible for us to get there. Um, so the maturity of the ecosystem, the maturity of entrepreneurs is also growing, and the ability for an entire ecosystem to come together to make that happen is also coming together. So I think you're seeing it. Some of us get a little anxious and maybe impatient, but it's just a matter of time in my mind.
Fantastic, thanks. Here's a question by Ruchi Kakkad. In terms of resilience, what are some of the common resources which every startup would need to cater to increased demands?
Yeah. So first of all, I think just to have the thought process clear in your mind as to what is the market that you're going to go after, what product are you going to employ, what technology are you going to employ to build that product is absolutely important. This is something that you have to get right. Once you start doing that, the ability for you to once you have your MVP or whatever you call it, the first product market fit, a lot of these other things will come out much more easily after that. So obviously you need to be able to um, move much faster once that initial traction has been established. So a lot of people continue to tinker with the product and want to make it even better looking, maybe faster. But I think it's important um, for us to try and get as many customers as possible to start evaluating this from their perspective. I mean, as much as we have spoken to them, we validated the need, everything is done. The more and more we get customer feedback, the faster you can do that. The better you will be in a position to get the product right and then get it to go out into the market in a much more uh, scalable way.
Here's a question from Divakar Singh, and this is slightly, focused towards today's situation, which is the pandemic. He asks, what is the contribution of the IT innovation ecosystem in addressing the pandemic challenges? Any return to normalcy solutions focused towards situational intelligence, and on those lines, right? So, how do you see IT innovation system address pandemic or challenges arising out of the pandemic today in India?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Yeah,
So,
maybe, yeah.
yeah. So there are hundreds of conversations on work from home last year, ignoring the return to work solutions. What industry need is solutions which enable work from home. So basically, we're into this situation where work from home is there, or any other situational intelligence situations might be there, right? So what has IT as a sector maybe done to address these challenges coming out of the pandemic today? I hope that's the way I understood it correctly.
Yeah, or maybe we'll ask him to elaborate on it. But let's take an attempt at it. So, a lot of the IT sector that has now pretty much given up their nice offices and gone back to work from home, they continue to do so. Nothing much has changed. Whenever I spoke to a lot of the heads of these development centers, they basically talked about how they are managing to get laptops to these people, trying to make sure that the right security systems are in place so that they can access data from the company servers. They also were trying to make sure that they were compliant with certain customer agreements where certain data would not be shared with anybody, but they're sitting at home with their spouses sitting right across or next to them and looking at the same screen. So how do they ensure privacy and stuff like that? So those are the kinds of issues that they were facing. The good news is, despite all that, I think the productivity of these development centers continues to be there. It has not dropped. In fact, there's more work that's being coming into India now because of the fact that this has become an important element of uh, creating the IT systems for the future and the innovation coming associated with that coming into this. So that's definitely happening. Are they tapping into startups a lot to do that? Not at the moment. What I have seen a lot of the development centers is, while they had some innovation budgets, anywhere from, I would say, maybe 2-3 crores to $500,000. Now all of that has been taken back into the headquarters because they are saying we'll make these decisions from here because we want to kind of take this opportunity to take a much larger view. So some of these decisions are being made, continue to be made from the headquarters now. So and therefore, it'll take some time to figure out how best to go back and re-engage with them as far as startups are concerned. I don't know if that answered the question, but
I hope so. If you have, please do share that. Here's another question, and this one's from Vinod Poddar. He talks about mergers and acquisitions where startups in the same field, same space, same domain may look at an opportunity to integrate or to merge together in order to overcome the challenges out of COVID. So have you seen or do you have any access to data on startup founders who have merged or integrated or acquired in order to grow or just survive?
yeah, in fact, I was speaking to someone from IIM Bangalore some time ago, other incubator managers, other people who are managing certain things. They actually, were um, very specifically looking at, putting a few startups together and say, rather than each one of you trying to fend off, a particular change that has come into your area, is there a much larger solution? So some of these sectors, especially like the government sector and some of the large corporations, they don't necessarily have a problem statement that is small enough for one startup to solve for, right? So you usually need a much larger problem to solve for them to even begin to understand what is it that you have provided them. be it the government or the large corporation. So if you are solving maybe only 5 to 10% of the larger problem, and obviously the governments and others do not necessarily take you very seriously, because there's so much more of system integration to be done, so much more project management to be done. So they rather have something that's at least 50% to 60% of the problem statement that they have provided you. So even if it's not merging of any kind, but collaboration to build something much larger is important, because the urgency has been created by the pandemic. There's definitely that. So people are aware of it. They're needing it like yesterday. That is there. Now, how do you really come together to solve these things is something that a lot of these people who have a vantage point of knowing several startups or have several startups under their wings, doing this. In fact, in THub itself, we have I think about 4 water management or waste management startups that have been asked to work together to go hunt in packs rather than hunt individually, because the opportunities for them to present a much more solid solution is much higher.
Excellent. Here's a question by Karthik Reddy, who's a third-year student, and he and his friends have created an idea. They've come up with an idea. They are building on the technology. Can they pitch this idea at THub, and what kind of support can they get?
Well, they can definitely pitch THub. There must be an email address that Shankar can put on the chat box. So we may find that to be a little early stage. Then we will actually connect you to somebody, one of our incubator partners, who can actually work with you immediately. When you're a little further along, you can come work with us. But start with us. We'll tell you what the next steps are.
Here's a question by Venkat KL from Startup Sanatana. I hope I said this correctly. Please compare and contrast, regular startup ecosystem versus resilient startup ecosystem. Maybe some differences between the two.
Well, so Venkat, I know, will enjoy this. So let me take an analogy from Mahabharata, right? So look at Karna. Karna as a character. A lot of people love him for who he is. A magnanimous person who was ready to do a lot of things for people. But at the same time, he chose to be loyal to Duryodhana, right? So, as much as he was the eldest of Kunti's children, he decided not to fight with the Pandavas, even though they were his brothers. So, all of these things are there in the Indic mythology. But Karna as a character is also resident in us as people. We have that thing going on. So one is obviously loyalty to a person or loyalty to a certain element of the ecosystem or the context, rather than the larger purpose which you are trying to do. What is the right thing to do versus the wrong thing to do, to actually being loyal to Duryodhana and saying, this guy came up and helped me when I needed that validation. He made me the king of Anga and so on and so forth. So I will be loyal no matter what, whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing to do, right? So one is, if you are building a startup and that startup has that vision of going somewhere, and instead you get either mired in founder dynamics, or get worried about certain things that are not necessarily the way to vanity metrics or MRR growth, and that's the way to do it, or raising more money than your classmate who did it for something else. These are the wrong things to get distracted by, or these are the wrong things to be loyal to. and therefore you lose out, building the real big startup that you really went out to start doing. The other one is victimhood. I think he always felt that life was not very fair to him. It was fair to other people, it was not fair to him. So that victimhood was always something that was with him. And startups, entrepreneurs who embarked on the journey of being those valiant warriors, and if they feel that there is that missing piece, and somehow something is missing, I'm not getting everything that I can. I think there's nothing like that. You embarked on this for the purpose of taking that risk and doing whatever it took to make it happen. And you can't say, well, the environment is not providing me what it is, because you went out to change the environment, right? So I see that a startup ecosystem is just a good collection of um, good startups working together, and all that. But a resilient one, I feel, are the ones who actually are able to understand the purpose of with which they have actually embarked on building their startups, and really seeing whatever it takes to unlock its fullest potential, and also not fall into a trap, a human trap of saying, I cannot make these circumstances change. These circumstances have befallen me, and I know I am a victim to this circumstances. But actually come out with a completely new direction, if necessary, to be successful.
Awesome. We needed this reference going back into the ages. Our session would not be complete without that. There's one last question. We are at 3:58. So one last question is, Padma Shanti asked this question, have there been any innovations, waste management or otherwise, that have been deployed or adopted into any government processes within the THub ecosystem? Have there been any interactions? Have there been any adoptions where the startups have been able to solve problems of the government and work together?
Yeah. So we are one of those very fortunate organizations, along with TSIC. The other hat that I wear is the Chief Innovation Officer of the TSIC, another organization. So as part of that, getting the government to be innovative is one of my charters. So as part of that whole process, we work very closely with the different government departments. In fact, just 2 days ago, we did one for some 5 departments. We did a primer, if you will, on what startups are and how to work with them and so on. But also at the same time, we have the chief secretary of the state, the IT secretary of the state, principal secretary, and IT and finance principal secretary. These are all people who are tuned to startups, and we do curated sessions with them. So we bring in startups from healthcare. We bring in startups from educare, edutech, agri-tech, and present them to these people, so that it's not just them looking at it and say, wow, great stuff. It's actually where their entire department is sitting there, and they are told that, okay, this startup, please go work with these guys. This is what we would like to do with them. Try to run a trial with them, solve this problem that we've had in the districts, and so on and so forth. So this is the kind of work that that is happening today. It's still early days. I think we can do a lot more, but we have made a very, very good beginning.
Excellent. So we are at 4 o'clock sharp, and it's been a fantastic session. I've enjoyed and learned a lot as usual. It looks like from the comments, the audience members have enjoyed this as well. We do have a lot of other questions. Hopefully, Shankar, you're able to organize one more session down the line. And thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Shankar. Thank you, audience members. Please be careful. Stay safe. It's still very grim out there, but let's work towards getting out of this COVID crisis. in a way that we can again meet in person soon. So thanks, Ravi. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thanks, Shankar, for having me here.
Thank you. Thank you, Darshan. Thank you, Shankar.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.